Welcome, everyone. I'm Sheila Kamara Hay of Ecstatic Birth, here today with a good friend and colleague, Katerina Baranova. I am so excited to introduce you to Katerina because, you know, as birth workers, a lot of the work we do is like an outpouring of our love and our energy, and that outward, it's like mothering the mothers. That's what birth workers do. And like moms get depleted, we get depleted. And so Katerina is very special. She's a doula, she's a childbirth educator, she's an NVC coach, among many other things. She's a multi-talented woman. And she's been working with me. She graduated my Ecstatic Birth practitioner training last year, where she was really immersed in the study of pleasure for a full year, how to bring it to her clients, how to embody it herself, and how to use it to transform her business. So I invited her here today to talk about this topic, transforming your business with pleasure, because that is the key to being able to build your business, create the opportunities that really excite you and energize you and have you move forward from a place that nourishes you and gives you energy, as opposed to feeling like you're always putting your energy out and having it be drained. So with that, I want to introduce you. Welcome, Katerina. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here and to share my stories. Where would you like me to start?
Yeah, it's always so fun to have you. So I guess, why don't we just start right there? Like, when you think about your business before and after pleasure, what are some of the key things that you've seen that have shifted? And then we can go more into like what you actually did. But just what have you noticed about pleasure and sourcing from pleasure as a way to grow your business or transform your business?
Then I will start talking a little bit about the client work. Like the way we work with clients as doulas, we do some prenatal meetings where we get to learn a little bit about the client, what they dislike, so we can support them better in actual birth, right? And often these kind of meetings are very educational. So that's basically, it may be similar to birth preparation course, but it's more like individualized, depending on if it's a first-time mom, she may need more information. If it's more experienced mom, she may want to work with something else, right? So what was interesting is, you know, the idea of pleasure in birth wasn't new to me when I came to your training. So I loved, actually, why I decided to become a doula is because I knew about orgasmic birth. I actually took training with Deborah Pascali-Banero, her Pain to Power birth preparation course. Mm-hmm. And I prepared for both of my births, also with the idea of pleasure in mind, right? I had very beautiful 2 home births in Guatemala. And so what was interesting is that I wanted to give so much. So every time when I had a meeting with a client, I was giving them a lot of information. And I felt that sometimes it maybe felt a little bit overwhelming just to get so many details and to absorb them. And it was kind of exhausting to me too, you know, like, because when you talk for 2 hours, after 2 hours, you feel like, and then you ask yourself, was it really useful? Was the client able to process this or not? And I know that some people do and some people don't. And from my own experience, I realized that, you know, I prepared for my first birth with the idea of orgasmic birth in mind. I watched the documentary, I read the book and everything, but it worked only partially. Why? Because just knowing about things doesn't mean that you're actually going to receive pleasure. So like knowing theoretically, right? Yeah. So what was really transformational is that when after I took your training and I started actually diving deeper myself and practicing pleasure on all kind of different levels, playing with sound, with breath, everything, right? I started incorporating it with my in the work with clients, giving them a little bit of body work every single time that we met. it started changing the things, because first I felt much more relaxed and joyful talking about this, and also it allowed the client to process it on a different level, on the body level, because when we feel it on the body level, it's not theory anymore. We can actually apply it in birth. So, and I would, instead of just giving the body practice and then just move on something, I would ask them to reflect on it. Like, so how was it for you? What was, like, was it pleasurable? Was, like, did you feel weird? Or there was, because for every person, every body practice lands differently, right? Like, I had a client that, for instance, couldn't imagine like a ball of light, for instance. For her, it was too abstract. But anything else, like if like really, really like body experience, when you can touch, for instance, that works beautiful for her, you know. For some other people, it could be the other way around. So we just find the strengths. And just actually, I'm working with one of my clients right now, and it's really interesting because she is pregnant with her 6th child.
Wow.
Number 6. Imagine, she had more births than I did. So she had more experience than I did. And anyway, she decided to take this ecstatic birth preparation sessions with me. She's not actually located in Guatemala, so I won't be able to go into birth with her. But she wanted like birth preparation, and she said like, I want to remove my fears, and I want to experience more pleasure. So these 2 things. So we didn't really talk about any details because she knows. She had all kind of birth experiences. She had hospital births. She has hospital births in 2 different countries. She had home births. You can just like imagine all possibilities. So, but still, she's like, one of her births were really pleasurable, but she couldn't really understand what worked for her. So we were like, so the conversation goes like, instead of educating the person, we were just exploring. And so like, so what do you think? And that, like, when she starts going deep inside of herself and asking on like her body, what is it? She gets the answers. And the thing is that like the answers that get from inside of the person, they really, I don't know how to explain it, but it's more effective because then the behavioral change goes, like they just know what to do, you know? When we just tell people what to do, they just like, maybe not, you know? But when they know it from inside, then it's a completely different thing. So that's why actually in coaching, it's very similar to coaching in the way that, because in the coaching, it's most effective when it's not just on one level. We often talk just about like mental level, preparing us mentally to give knowledge, but it's not the only thing. You need to address emotions, you need to address spirituality, you need to address behavior. So when it goes like in conflicts, then it's real transformation changes.
You're saying so many important things. It's really fun to hear you express it in your way, in your words. And I just want to highlight a few things that you said because it's so important. You're making such great points. The first being that like knowing something exists on the mind level, it opens the doorway, right? But it's like it's the body, it's the embodiment of it, which is really, really powerful. And I love that you are sharing that from your experience, being able to give women that embodiment of pleasure gives them a point of reference that they can always access. It's not from a heady place, right? And in birth, we're in our bodies. So to be able to have that reference within our bodies that we can access in birth is so important. And I love that you brought that forward. And I'm also curious, shifting your focus from, purely giving information and coaching and integrating this body work, what did it do for you, for your body?
Well, it brings a sense of ecstasy for me too, because as I teach them different body practices that come in the form of meditations, I'm feeling it myself. So it relaxes me, it gives me pleasure, it nurtures me. And actually, when we think about it, the best decisions that we make, they come from a sense of pleasure. If we are just, when we start the session and the person is kind of tense and scared, like they're going to talk about the fears, for instance, it's then they may make decisions from the point of fear, and it's not always the best decision, you know. So yeah, I don't know.
So it gave you a feeling of, it gives you, as you're supporting the person's pleasure, it gives you that experience of ecstasy in your body.
Yeah, and so, you know, nowadays I also record my meditations, because there is a lot of clients that I get right now. They Russians, because I'm actually Russian, and live in Guatemala with a Canadian husband. So I have kind of a
citizen of the world
story. Like, I think that we're the most exotic couple around the block here. Russian Canadian family in Guatemala. So anyway, so I have lots of clients that are Russian speaking or Spanish speaking, right? So, and so I'm creating my meditations and I'm recording them in Russian and in Spanish. So as I record, it's what I noticed was interesting. As I record them, sometimes I feel tired, but I kind of want to record certain things fast so my client gets it on time, right? And I noticed that my my tiredness goes away as I record, as I go into this sensual, pleasurable mood. Like it elevates my energy, quite literally. It gives me energy.
Which is awesome, right? Rather than, you know, your work depleting you, it's energizing you.
Exactly. That's amazing.
That's amazing. And so I also want you to talk about, you know, you've taken your business, you already had a birth business. As you said, you were already very involved with Birthing with Pleasure. In fact, I think that's your website, right? Birthing with Pleasure.
Birth with Pleasure.
Birth with Pleasure. So, but this year you really expanded your business and you really took it to a whole other level. And I'm curious, you know, what that was like for you and what role pleasure played in that.
Well, this year, Sheila and I, we went to an online conference for birth workers in Russia. And we presented, we talked about birth, we talked about pleasure as a tool in birth, right? How it can bring ecstasy and how it can elevate women's experience in birth. And it was amazing because it was the first time when I played the role of an interpreter. And the first time I actually was a speaker as well at the big conference, talking in front of a lot of people. And it was amazing. I felt when we started receiving the feedback from people, I don't know, it just felt like I got some wings or something. Because I could see, you know, they were telling me, for instance, there was lots of people that know about orgasmic birth, but they have a wrong idea. They think it's all about orgasms, and they think, well, if it's all about orgasms, it's not really for me, and there's nothing you can do about it, right? But when we start thinking that actually pleasure, any type of pleasure, and including sexual pleasure, can elevate experience, it doesn't have to be orgasmic in this sense, like birthgasms, right? Mm-hmm. But it just brought a completely new perspective to this birth practitioners. They said like, oh my God, you know, I heard something new and it actually makes sense. You know, it makes sense to use pleasure in birth. And they just wanted to hear more. They said like, we want more tools. We want to just to know how to bring this information to our clients, given that, you know, it's still a taboo. Sexuality is a taboo. In Russia, it's even more because, you know, if, for instance, if we talk about English-speaking countries, pregnancy is a celebration. We have something like as a baby showers, for instance, right? Mm-hmm. We celebrate that, oh, the baby's coming. In Russia, nobody talks about birth. And most of pregnant women don't even talk about them until the baby's born. And they don't show the picture of the baby usually almost until a month after birth. Wow. It's like superstitions that they have. They feel like there will be bad energy or something that will affect them. So if a woman doesn't show that she's pregnant, she doesn't have an opportunity to ask about what kind of birth experiences are available there, what other women experience, what, you know. So it's incredible what we did, you know. And I got lots of subscribers. I actually tripled my subscriber list since this event. And then we did another event with Sheila. And what I did, I translated, with the help of my colleague, I translated Sheila's introduction to ecstatic birth training sessions, which are amazing because there's like 20 interviews that, and plus your introduction, 20 interviews with different specialists, different professionals talking about ecstatic birth, each from their own angle, right? So I translated this introduction and we distributed it for free to all the registrants of this new event. And that brought another bliss or ecstasy, I guess. And my mail list tripled again. So basically, what is amazing now is that somehow, even though I don't really feel myself as big, you know, I'm not really, I'm just starting, but lots of people start seeing me as like the mom of ecstatic birth movement in Russia, right? So it's very interesting to see that when they start posting on the Instagram and they kind of waiting for my likes and approval. I got messages like this.
It's so fun. And you know, we can see your glow. That's what's so fun, is like every time we have a conversation about this, you light up. You're so happy. And for me, like, that's what it's all about. We all have passions in different fields. You know, for you, this birthing with pleasure is really, it's so aligned with your soul and your desire and your pleasure. For someone else, it might be pelvic floor work, or for someone else, it might be like energy work. And that's okay. What I really want everyone to see is that following your bliss, your pleasure, your ecstasy gives you glow like Katerina, and you get to like triple your mailing list over and over and over again, which is like, it's a win-win. And I think that, you know, pleasure is such an underrated tool in birth. I believe that it's the most holistic birthing tool that there is, but it's also very underrated in business, right? Business-wise, we're taught to, you know, to follow marketing strategies and insider tips and trainings. And those are all great and useful and wonderful. But the source where I believe your work should come from is your pleasure. Like, what lights you up? What are you passionate about? And I love that you're here sharing your story, Katerina, because I think you're such a gorgeous embodiment of what's possible when you follow your pleasure. Not only does it give you energy when you're tired doing your work, not only does it expand your leadership, not only does it expand your mailing list, it gives you joy and it lights you up from the inside. And that's where I think everyone needs to be doing their work from, and especially birth workers. Like, I know that birth workers have so much love in their hearts, and that love is always like going towards their clients and out and out and out. That's amazing, and that can get depleting, and to turn it around the way you're describing allows you give that love to your clients in a way that gives you energy too and lights you up too. So it's amazing for everyone.
You know, I would like to share something else. The aspect that probably, you know, lots of practitioners, even when they learn about how to, about birth, about pleasure in birth and like how it can be useful, they get stuck about how to talk to people about it, right? Like potential clients. And it's very interesting that even now I'm bringing the body practices even when I talk to potential clients. And this is really funny because the way it happens is just, do you mind if I share a couple of stories?
No, of course not. Please do.
I think that I shared in one internal group once. It actually happened at my husband's birthday. We decided like half a day we'll spend with kids, but half a day we would like to spend just two of us and go to the spa, have massage and everything. So we go to this gorgeous place that has like a spa with a great view on the lake and the mountains. And after having our massage, we go into the jacuzzi, and then we meet people there, right? So there is 4 young girls there. And we start the conversation. So I ask them, so what are you doing here? Are you on vacation? And they say that they actually celebrating, like, how do you call it? Like a bridal celebration. So one of the girls was about to get married. And she was there with her 3 best friends. Okay, so what we can talk about, right? Do you want children? Of course. How many? 8. And then I was like, I had like my eyes, like I was like, oh my God, this is like a potential client, like a really long-term potential client. Like maybe like 8 to 20 years potential client, you know? So I was like, okay, we need to let's talk about what I'm doing, right? So I started explaining her things about my work, how I teach women about pleasure in birth and like about sexual pleasure as well. And it's very interesting because I got, they were really interested to hear me. And I need to put you in perspective. Guatemala is a very conservative country. Most of it, it's very Catholic. There's Catholic in evangelics, but it's very religious society, you know? So no sex before marriage is very normal. And like, you know, can you imagine about sexual exploration and all of it, right? So it's kind of very delicate topic. But anyway, the girls were very, very interested. And I just decided to do it. Like, I was like, what can I do to make this girl to remember me as a doula? Not just on theoretical level, but just like really. So I was like, I'm going to give her one like a little bit of like a taste of what I'm going to do with her. And I just gave her, I was like, okay, do you know that the source of a pleasure not only outside of you, but it can be just inside of you? And she's like, no, like, do you want an example? Sure. So I was like, okay, close your eyes. And then all 4 girls closed their eyes. And then I tell them like, start breathing slowly and deeply and everything. And then I decided to use this lover technique, you know, to imagine the ideal lover approaching them and giving them a slow kiss. What I've seen on the face of my husband is completely other story. But anyway, they got it. I just gave them just this one sentence, you know? And then I told them, what do you feel in your body? Do you feel any changes? And they were like, yeah. So what? This girl subscribed to my Instagram account before even leaving jacuzzi.
That's amazing. That's such a great story. It's such a great story. And she will never forget that one kiss.
She will never forget because she felt it in her body. She felt it.
Just so everybody knows, I want you to, just so everyone knows how simple it is to access pleasure. How long was this meditation you did with her?
Oh my God, like 1 minute?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what it's about. It's not that hard to experience pleasure from within in this way and then to share it. As birth workers, the more we can do that for ourselves, then we can share it with everyone the way Katerina just did. And then we can really start to transform women's experiences because they have that memory in their body of how to access the pleasure within. So brilliant. I love that you did that at the spa.
And I keep doing it. I keep talking about this in very random places. I never know where it will, actually, and how it will affect women. Sometimes women hear this information, they give it to the friend, or something else happens. Another funny story that happened to me is that I actually, once I had a back problem and I needed urgently to find a chiropractor. And I found this clinic where I go, I was sitting there waiting for my turn, and the secretary, that's another story about how just talking about pleasure brings pleasure. I was in pain there, just waiting for my turn. And there is this pregnant secretary in front of me. And she sees in my list, they ask the profession, what is your profession? And I put, not so many people know what is doula, so I put birth educator, educadora de parto.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, what is a birth educator? So we started conversation. I just started feeling how my pain goes away, just talking. And then half an hour later, I go to my turn to the chiropractor, and I find out that my chiropractor is a woman, which is a kind of surprising. Very strong woman, really good. And when I lay down and she starts massaging me and adjusting me, she's also asking me this question because she's like, oh, my secretary told me that you do this. And so what is it about? I started telling her and I started explaining about, I don't know how the conversation goes, but I started explaining her about anatomy of the clitoris. Right, like she's massaging me and I'm explaining her how it affects, how it can affect if you respect our anatomy and you can include sexual pleasure, how it can affect our actually the pushing phase, right?
Mm-hmm.
And stuff like this. So she's like, wow, And at this point, she said that she had one child, she had a C-section, and she would like to have a second one. So she was listening with full attention. Yeah. So guess what? Second time I saw her, she was pregnant. Wow. And I reminded her because she started asking me questions. She remembered that I'm a doula, but she didn't remember particularly this piece about the clitoris, right? So I reminded her, by the way, do you remember our conversation? She was like, oh yeah. Guess what? She said, can you send me your information? I'm interested.
Fantastic.
So you never know how it will work out. There's really some weird situations when you talk about sexuality in birth like this. But you never know, I
think the thing that makes it so effective is that it's so much fun for you.
It's fun.
So much fun for you. You're not doing this. You're not going about being like, oh my goodness, I see a pregnant person. I need to market my services. That's not what you're doing. You're actually following your pleasure. You're following your bliss. You're sharing what's fun for you to share. And that's what's guiding you, as opposed to moving from this headspace of, oh, I should be doing X, Y, and Z. You're letting your body guide you. You're letting your pleasure guide you. And that's where you're coming from. And that's magnetic. That's what these people are responding to, is like your magnetism, your glow, your joy.
And I think that one of this, can I share another story? It's just too much fun.
Yeah.
Another story that happened, as women, from time to time we go to beauty salon to do our nails and stuff like this. So do I. And if you do both manicure and pedicure, it may take up to 2 hours, right? So I love to learn I cannot just sit there and do nothing. So for me, I love to learn. So I bring this, I brought this book with me that is so I could learn more stuff that you're teaching in your training. That's a book of anatomy of women's arousal, right?
Terry Winston, Women's Anatomy
Yes.
of Arousal.
Yes. So I start reading it, and the girls are doing me the nails and stuff like this. But I was like, it's in English, people will not get into it. But then she sees a very thought-provocative pictures of people's genitals, and then she's like, what are you reading? So I show her the title, and she's like trying to read, like she doesn't really know English, so she's like, anatomy of women's arousal, like what is that? So I just started giggling, and I'm like, well, I read this book for my work. They start giggling even more, trying to imagine what kind of work I have, like that I'm learning about sexuality and stuff. And I'm looking at them, they're just like barely cold but laugh, And I'm like, well, I start giggling myself, I'm imagining all these possibilities that come to the head, right? And then I'm like, okay, I think that I need to clarify what I'm doing. Do you mind? So I started explaining them, I'm a birth educator, and actually sexuality is a big, I think it's very important. It's part of, birth is part of our sexuality, and up to today, lots of women don't even know how the sexual organs work. Lots of women don't really spend time to explore themselves, And what I'm learning is that the stuff that will help me to educate them about how to have a pleasurable birth. And they were like, wow, they've never heard about this before. It's like a shock, but it's a pleasant shock in a way. Like first it starts with giggling and joking, but then they just like they're listening, So I don't know if they're going to use it somehow or not, or maybe they're going to tell their friends, But it's important to keep talking about this stuff to people, and you may get recommendations just because it's different. When you just say I'm a birth doula and birth educator, well, people are like, okay, well, But when you just start talking about like ecstatic birth and bringing birth to not completely as a level, I don't even talk sometimes I don't talk about specifically sexuality. I just say like, birth doesn't have to be a terrible experience that a woman is afraid of. Birth is the first birthday of your baby, and we remember this every year when we celebrate the birthday, and you want to remember this with a smile on your face.
Yeah.
Right? So just this idea is revolutionary for lots of women, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you're bringing up such a good point, which is that our culture is so far from this. This is not normal for women. The work that you're doing, the work that I'm doing, it is the cutting edge of birth work. And once you start to integrate this into your offerings as a birth provider, you become a leader. You become cutting edge, in birth work. So, oh my gosh, Katerina, I feel like I could talk to you forever and ever and ever and ask a million questions. But our time is done. And I just want to ask if there's anything else that you want to share. I know that you are also an NVC coach, and that there's, that there's plenty there for women to learn from as well when it comes to birth.
Okay, how much time do we have?
Let's just do like a couple of minutes, and we can put afterwards we'll put all the links to all the resources, so if people do want to know more. But I know that that's a piece that's also so deeply tied to your pleasure that I want to make sure that you share some of that.
This year I actually taught a course that was 8 months course on it was actually called NVC practice group. So I was more like a facilitator, but lots of people thought that I was actually teaching. I was coaching people in these classes. And what was interesting for me that I learned that nonviolent communication is another tool that deepens the information, the skills that I got from your training, because it shortens the contraction time in our life. You know, when we talk about expansion, like expansion as happiness and ecstasy, contraction is more like when we're sad or angry. So it works with this, and I think it's really gives another level of understanding what pleasure is. Pleasure is actually it's emotion that we get from satisfying our needs. So when our needs are satisfied, we feel pleasure, we feel joy, we feel happiness, all this positive range of emotions. When our needs are not satisfied, then it's the opposite, when we feel sad, angry, depleted, irritated, all of it, right? So when we think about this pleasure as this, something like this, it brings us a different idea. Women are not used to ask, to make their needs satisfied, because we are nurturers, and in our society, the main idea is that women, they sacrifice themselves for the children, for the husband, for the sake of family. And it's very common. So I'm getting a little bit lost because there's lots to say.
I know there's so much to say. Well, maybe we do another one about NVC specifically.
Yeah, well,
I'm just.
Yeah, it's just a teaser. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'll say this, from the bit I know about NVC and the work that you do with NVC, it's a way of being able to share your thoughts and ideas in a way that the other person is able to receive it in a more deeply. And that's really powerful. I mean, you can add whatever you want, but the piece that I want to say about it is that it's really powerful, because sometimes when we're talking to people about experiences in birth that are different from what they know or what they have, that can feel confronting. Sorry, what did you want to say?
That's only one part of it. Actually, I see that nonviolent communication is not only a tool that helps to connect with other people. I think that the primary goal is actually connecting with ourselves, because we're so disconnected. We feel angry, but we move on, because people don't like to think and look in the eyes of the fears, or they don't like to experience negative emotions. They just avoid them. And one of the really simple technique that changed my life when I started doing it daily, it was a self-empathy technique. When I actually, every time when I feel that I'm going out of my plate, so I feel like sad or angry or something is happening, I just, instead of moving to some other thing on the to-do list, I'm actually stop everything, I calm down, and I ask myself, what do I feel? What do I feel? And what makes me, what happens in my life that I'm feeling this way? And then one of the things is that most people think that feeling is something that, like, other people make us feel something, which is not true. Other people's action or absence of action can be a trigger for our emotion, but it's not the cause of our emotions. And what the cause is our needs. And when we think this way, then we stop judging other people. We stop saying, "Oh, this doctor did this. He's so horrible. That's why I'm feeling so bad." You start thinking about it more in a way like, this doctor did this, and I felt this because I was needing this. So how can I get what I need? And then it's not anger anymore. It's a sadness. It's mourning. But then from this light sadness, like you just start feeling the tension goes away from your body, and you start moving to the positive. When you start feeling like, okay, I'm needing privacy, maybe I can ask for it. Or I'm needing connection with my husband, maybe I can ask him to look into my eyes. But like, because if we just stuck with this idea that, oh, my husband is doing something wrong, he just left me here, like, you can just get stuck in this emotion, and it will not help you in birth. Because when we feel angry and we feel so much in our head analyzing stuff, it doesn't help our birth. But when we kind of process this emotion, and this is another thing that the NVC helps me actually as a doula, I can help the client to process the emotion and bring her back to, what do you need? How, and what is beautiful about the needs, they're universal. And there is lots of strategies to satisfy them. There is more than one. People often feel angry when they're stuck with one strategy,
And I can feel when you're talking about it, how good that feels.
I'm just making them unstuck.
Yeah.
I give them, there is a range of possibilities. I open the eyes on this, and they just relax and they go back to the pleasure. So just this way, you make the contraction time in your life shorter. And then you release more energy for what you like or for pleasure, and and it's not just about birth, it's about any situation in life.
Yeah, but one of the things we talk about a lot in relation to birth is this idea of flow, right? Using
flow, yes,
to help you access flow. And that's exactly what you're highlighting, right? And so in the Ecstatic Birth Practitioner training, we go through a lot of different tools, a lot of pleasure tools to help you access flow. So what I'm hearing is this is another tool to help access flow. And flow is what contributes to ease as opposed to constriction, like you said.
What is interesting is that as much as I know, there is nobody who teaches NVC to doulas.
Maybe that will be your next
I'm doing
your pleasure to expand your birth business even more following your pleasure. Katerina, this is so delightful. I want you to share, if people want to connect with you or get to know more about your work, where do they go? How do they
I think the best way is to go to my website, which is birthwithpleasure.com.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just, birthwithpleasure.com. Easy. So, and they can send me an email, or they can find my Instagram, which is also Birth with Pleasure.
Okay.
And at the moment, I have 2 accounts, one in English, one in Russian, and the Spanish one is coming soon. So yeah.
So cool. So I'll put all those links right here in this post. I'll update it after we're done sharing here so that anyone that wants to find you can. And for those of you that are enjoying everything that, Katerina's been sharing about how integrating pleasure into birth, your birth work, your offerings, and your business in general. If you're intrigued by that, if you'd like to learn more about that, I'd invite you to check out the Ecstatic Birth Practitioner training. It's coming up in just a couple of months, and I'll put the link for that in this as well. So thank you, my dear. It's always so fun to feel your enthusiasm and your excitement, and I hope that it continues to expand as you move forward as a leader in this field.
Thank you, Sheila. It's mutual, It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and you're a great teacher in a way that what I want people to know is that Sheila is really pushing people into leadership, to stand up on their own. And it may feel in a way that you just, I like how you do it sometimes, like, you can do it, I know you can do it.
Transforming birth from pain to pleasure is a really big job. It's not something I can do by myself. I need every single woman who's feeling called to that to step up. And you've made me super proud. It's been such a pleasure to watch you really fly.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And thanks everyone. Until next time, I look forward to more.
Bye.
Bye.